Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 16.0.3 and iOS 16.1 Beta 5 have been out for a few days to developers and public beta testers, and I wanted to talk about the overall experience as well as your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video there's over 13,000 votes and almost 300 comments. I've read all of those comments to give you the best understanding of how these updates are and whether or not you should install them. But first, before we talk about that and the comments at the end of the video, let's first talk about some new features and refinements with iOS 16.1. Apple's really been refining the dynamic island. There's still some issues with it on the latest phones, but the dynamic island ring color when on a dark wallpaper actually changes color based off of what you're in. That's something I haven't seen pointed out elsewhere, so if we change the actual wallpaper, we'll just change over to the moon one here. We'll go to this wallpaper, and maybe we go into music. If we just play a song, swipe home, you'll see it goes to the dynamic island and it's outlined. This outline actually changes color depending on what you're in and what you're doing. So if I was to place a phone call, and if I call Apple and swipe home, you'll see that the outline is actually green. I've seen this actually change dynamically depending on what you're doing. And thanks to Fresco for sending this along, he was able to get it to show up in YouTube, also, of course, in phone calls, and also in Twitter. So that's something that looks like it's popping up for different people, showing the outline of the associated app and its color. I've only seen this a few different times, but it's something that they keep updating. Now also, when you see something in the dynamic island, you can swipe and shrink it out of the way. So you'll see the dynamic island is sort of gone with what's in there. Swipe again the other way, it brings it back up. So this is something, again, I haven't seen mentioned elsewhere. Swipe toward it, and it shrinks the dynamic island, whatever's up there, away. Swipe back out, and it brings it back. So that's one of the refinements in this update. Now, if you're in an area with a connected Apple TV, you'll actually see that in the dynamic island as well. So if we go into the remote app, we'll just tap to play. I'll go home. You'll see it shows up here. So I have this at my home Apple TV. And if we tap on this, of course, we have controls for it. So they've refined this. They've also refined the remote with different volume buttons and more. So this has actually been updated, and I think it's much better than what we had before. So it's great to see that. And now we have more control and more features of the dynamic island. Now, if we go into settings, go down to General. Under General, go down to Legal and Regulatory. Apple has just refined what it says here to bring it up to date with the latest legal rules and regulations. So that's something that's actually been updated compared to Beta 4. That's a pretty small update, and also to go along with that, thanks to my friend Bram at TechRender, he sent this over. You can see when he was agreeing to the terms and conditions for the update, it actually gives him the option to send by email. So that's something that's new. If you want a whole copy to be sent by email, you can do that. Then you can read the whole thing if you want to see what they've changed, if you look into that. So that has been updated in Beta 5. Now, Beta 5 does not have a bunch of changes compared to Beta 4. It's more of a refinement and getting things ready for a public release. We're still waiting for satellite connectivity on the latest iPhone 14 series, and there should be a whole demo section for that eventually under cellular. So we'll be able to try that out as soon as maybe the release candidate or the final release. Hopefully they enable it by then. Also, something Apple announced this week is Apple Card Wallet Daily Cash. So you'll see Apple Card will soon let users grow daily cash rewards while saving for the future. So this is something where you'll have a high-yield savings account from Goldman Sachs. This is coming soon. They announced it this past week and should be available hopefully fairly soon. So if you want to use that as your savings account, you can do that. Otherwise, of course, you can keep whatever you're used to using. Now, for those of you using iOS 16.0.3, this is pretty good overall, but there are some mixed results. Specifically, many people say it has great battery life and few, if any, bugs. That's not 100% true for everyone, but the majority of people have told me that they've had great battery life based on the comments. And again, we'll read some of those toward the end of the video. But most say it's pretty good and fairly bug-free. There's still some for a few people, but mostly things going on in the background if you're having poor battery life, such as the Photos app. I've seen people say the Photos app is syncing, and that can take a few days. That actually can take a week or more, depending on how many photos you have, what your overall connection status is with speed through Wi-Fi, and also if it's on the charger or not. So a lot of those things can factor in, but most people say things are nice and fast, such as the camera, as it fixes that, going through different apps, opening music, music or anything else seems to be very fast for most people. So going back in, waiting for it to load, ProMotion is nice and fast. No real big complaints with 16.0.3 as far as the things it's fixed. There's still things that remain though. As far as iOS 16.1 Beta 5, well, it's mostly solid for me, but there are definitely still some bugs. So it has decent battery. Again, we'll check that in a moment. There's some odd cellular issues for some people where their cellular connection just completely drops away and then they have to reboot to get it back. I've heard this from multiple people, and it's something that keeps showing up time and time again with this beta. So people have actually mentioned that. Also, if you're using YouTube, if we go into one of my videos and then you're using picture-in-picture, some people see this just completely crash. So YouTube picture-in-picture is not working well for everyone. Some of the sizing is weird. I notice sometimes swiping it off the screen is odd. That could just be an app update from YouTube though, but that's something people have reported. I still have stutter when swiping home, so if I go into an app like this, we'll go ahead and play this song again. Let's see how well it works. Swipe home. It worked fine that time. Anytime I try and show it on screen, it seems to be nice and fast, but typically it's sort of laggy for me most of the time. I'll go into it and it will just stutter as I swipe home. So I've seen that over and over, and it's something that I continue to see for whatever reason. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. The day after I installed Beta 5, my phone completely rebooted. I just looked over, I tapped a couple buttons, looked over, and it completely rebooted. And it wasn't a respring, it was a full reboot. So it shut off, rebooted, and it took a little bit of time. So there's some odd bugs in this still for sure. Also, another thing you'll see is the search button at the bottom just says SEA. So where on the iPhone 11 it says search, I found that my font automatically resized the overall text and everything. For some reason, all of a sudden, I looked over and my text had changed. Then those things occurred. So I've tried to reboot. It seems to be staying now. So that's something I'm seeing. It's kind of an odd bug, but I'm actually seeing this still on this device. So that's something I had to go back into my settings, go to my display, change the text size, fix this, and get it back to what it was. So it was really odd that that happened. I've also seen an odd bug where my media player on the lock screen was overlapping the daily summary, and the media player was blank. It was showing the waveforms, but the album art and everything else wasn't showing. So there's some odd bugs still here and there, and some misalignments for some people on the Dynamic Island. And here's one of the bugs with Dynamic Island. I just closed out of music, and it didn't clear off the Dynamic Island. So you'll see here, now it went back in and loaded it. Now it's playing again, but the music's playing. If I pause it here, swipe home, now it's working. Now there's also issues with AirPods Pro 2 with syncing properly. This is something quite a few people have been mentioning, where in different scenarios, whether you're watching TV or something else, the audio seems out of sync with the AirPods. I would imagine that the latest update will fix this. Of course, we had a beta update a week and a half or so ago at this point, and that may have resolved that for some issues, but I still see this reported. So I think there's a sync issue that still remains. And also, if you want to know what that update is, you do need to be a developer. I have them on my first gen AirPods Pro. We'll give that a second to connect. And if we go back over to the menu here, you'll see they're connected. If we go to the bottom, you'll see the version is 5B40C. That's the latest beta update, but you do need to be a developer, connect to Xcode, and enable the developer mode. You can do that, I hear, in different third-party tools, but that's something I don't ever do. I go directly into the Apple official tools. So enabled the developer mode and was able to see the actual update. So that's something that I hope will be resolved. I would expect, along with an update for this, an update for AirPods soon to fix those issues. Now, as far as overall performance, well, on the public version of 16.0.3, really no issues here or there that most people are saying. Like I said before, the camera's opening nice and fast where it had problems before. Going into things like music is nice and fast. If you're just going into any app in general, it seems to be nice and quick as you would expect, whether that's fitness or anything else. I haven't opened Translate in a while. You'll see here, I reset this device and everything's just nice and fast as you would expect. So no issues there. I really haven't heard many issues about 16.0.3 as far as performance from anyone. And that's pretty much true for 16.1 Beta 5 as well, other than the different stuttering I showed you or talked about earlier. So there's definitely some odd issues here and there, but performance overall seems to be all right. I did run benchmarks on this device just to see how it's going after a few days. We'll let it load here just a moment. It seems to load pretty slow on this device for some reason, just the 14 Pro Max and the 14s. But you'll see here, I ran it today, and we have a single core score of 1,871, multi-core is 5,484. So multi-core has gone up significantly since the initial test of this when it came out, and it's actually about the same for single core. It's actually 1 point slower, which isn't anything to really look at. So in general, it seems to be performing as you would expect. Normally, I'm just looking for very different numbers, maybe 1,000 off or something like that. I haven't noticed an issue. I've also not noticed really any heating issues, so the phone is staying nice and cool for me on the beta. 16.0.3, people are saying the same thing. It's very cool to the touch, unless I just run something intensive like Geekbench, then it will cool right down. It's completely normal to heat up when charging the battery. Batteries get warm when charging, or if you're playing an intensive game, Call of Duty or PUBG or something else, that will warm up the phone. There's no fans in here, so it will make it a little bit warm. And if you've ever seen a gaming PC, they're liquid cooled many times, the one I have is, and it dumps a ton of heat into the room. It's completely normal for processors to get hot when under heavy use, but it really hasn't gotten excessively hot. As far as overall battery life, I wanted to share that with you. So we'll go into settings, we'll go down to battery here. Of course, this being a 14 Pro Max, I'm at 100%, but my other device is at 98 after a year. And you'll see here, yesterday wasn't great. 2 hours and 34 minutes of screen on time, 5 hours and 39 minutes of screen off time, and I used 75% of my battery. Some background activity, running podcasts, and more. It really varies greatly depending on who you ask. So the day before, 2 hours and 31 minutes, and then screen off time was 3 hours and 26 minutes, or screen idle, as they say now. Now let's take a look at Cameron's battery life, who he sent this in and had a much different result. Now we actually sent that over on our Telegram server. We also have Discord, so if you want to check those out, those are linked below. We have an official version of each of those. And you'll see on his device, also a 14 Pro Max, he had incredible battery life. 3 hours and 58 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 40 minutes of screen idle time, and used just over 25% of his battery, meaning he's easily going to get 12 hours of screen on time or more. So that's without charging or anything else. I verified that with him, and it seems to be doing very well. So it really depends on what you're doing, but most people are saying it's quite good. Now, iOS 16.1 is getting close to a final public release, and I would expect the release candidate this coming week. So at this point, I would expect it as soon as probably Monday or Tuesday. Since we've been getting the updates on Tuesday, I would expect it Tuesday the 18th with a final release the following week. It's possible we could see a beta 6 and then an RC toward the end of the week, but either way, I would expect it the last week of October, as that's when we're expecting other releases as well. So a final release the last week of October, most likely, to go along probably with iPadOS 16 and macOS Ventura. So we're waiting for those. Apple said it'll be here in October based off their website. I would expect it to be, well, at this point, the last week of October based off of that. We could have an Apple event where we see different iPads and Macs as well, or it could just be a press release. But either way, we need those updates, and again, I think it's the last week of October. Also, iOS 16.2 betas would start rolling out as well. So if we have a final release of iOS 16.1 in the last week of October, that same week, probably 16.2 beta 1. It's possible they could wait another week until November or so, but either way, we can start moving into the next version with updated features and refinements. Also, one thing I wanted to mention is you'll see here that the overall sort of highlighting marker of calendar is sort of a square. So it's a rounded square. On the other one with the same version, it's actually round. I noticed that just as I was looking at this, and so that's kind of odd that it's doing that. I didn't change any settings, but that could go along with the odd font change or overall size change that I saw earlier. Now, as far as if you should install any of these updates, of course, if you haven't installed iOS 16.0.3 yet, I would highly recommend it if you're on any version of iOS 16. It's a security update along with the previous updates that were released, along with some bug fixes and more. If you have an iPhone 14, you definitely want to install it, as it fixes issues with that as well. So definitely install that. I would hold off on iOS 16.1 betas unless you're already a beta tester. At this point, just wait for the final release since we're so close, or at least the release candidate, which is typically the final release that you get early as a developer or beta tester. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the YouTube community poll and some of your comments. So we'll go back to community here, and you'll see At the time of this video, we're still at 13,000 votes, but now we're at 307 comments. Now, at this time, you'll see 63% of you are on 16.0.3, 17% of you are using 16.1 beta 5, 9% of you haven't updated to either. You're on 16.0.2 or older, 8% are on 15.7 or older, and 3% are using something else, whether that's iOS 14, Android, or something else. So thanks again for voting here and helping us get the most accurate data possible. Now let's take a look at some of your comments. Avi says, iOS 16.1 beta 5 on my iPhone 14 Pro Max, everything works fine beside the Tesla app, which on this beta seems to have issues with connecting to my car when my phone is in sleep mode. Have to unlock the phone to be able to get into the car. Didn't happen in the previous beta. Battery life is very good, 7 hours of screen active and 16 hours of screen idle. I actually haven't had an issue at all. I've found better connectivity using Tesla since I do use that for my car. I walk up, but not ever in sleep mode. Once I'm out of sleep mode, it's probably not activating that to save some power. So I would turn off sleep mode for that, although I'll have to try that out now. Will says, my experience on iOS 16.0.3 on my iPhone 12 Pro Max is that it has not cured many of the problems I had before. The copy-paste bug, flaky Wi-Fi, dodgy typing, etc. And this is what I was referring to before. Some people have a tremendously great experience, other people just have a poor experience. It really depends on the device and many different factors. So most people in the comments say it's great, but not everyone. Matthias said, I was having quite poor battery life on my iPhone 13 Pro while using 16.0.2, but as soon as I switched to 16.0.3, it started being very good again, and I haven't had any issues with bugs so far. Definitely happy with it. So again, different experience on a different phone. Masood said, battery life has been great for me on my iPhone 13 Pro Max on iOS 16.1 beta 5 without any issues, and it's been good. And by the way, love your variety of wallpapers and videos. Keep up the great work, Aaron. Thank you. Lauren Green said, I had an iPhone 11 Pro Max and I noticed battery life wasn't good at all on iOS 16.0.2, and then when I updated to iOS 16.0.3, I noticed a big difference. Yesterday, I got the iPhone 14 Pro and I've had no problems with iOS 16.0.3. Battery life, of course, is great with it being a new phone. Love the new iPhone and iOS 16.3, and thanks for all you do. And so that's everything with iOS 16.1 beta 5 and iOS 16.0.3. Expect 16.1 in a couple weeks at this point. That's what it's looking like, and hopefully we'll have some new Apple products to check out soon as well, iPads and more. So if there's anything else you found in beta 5, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, or even something I missed in iOS 16.0.3. Let us know in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, it'll be linked in the description as always. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.